Welcome to Graphite Hub's interview series, a series dedicated to all things graphite. Now, we're thrilled to be recording this live from the International Mining and Resource Conference here in Sydney, Australia. And so we're currently recording this from the exclusive podcast zone known as On Air at IMARC. And we're joined by Andrew Worland, Managing Director and CEO of International Graphite. So welcome, Andrew.
Morning, Harry. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Great to be doing this in person.
Yeah.
So let's kick this off. There's about 10,000 attendees here at IMARC. What are the key themes that you've been hearing so far this week?
Well, we got off to a wonderful start, didn't we, with the announcement from Washington on the Monday afternoon their time, Tuesday morning our time, the critical minerals partnership between Australia and the United States. So that put a lot of enthusiasm and euphoria through the conference. And there is a heavy critical minerals theme here, particularly around supply chain resilience. So it came at a perfect time for us and put a bit of air in everyone's tyres, which is nice.
Yeah, no, they couldn't have timed it any better.
Yeah.
So turning to the broader graphite market, in the last few weeks, we've seen graphite companies trade at either their 52-week high or very close to their 52-week high. Is that translating into actual interest in say, a company like International Graphite?
Yeah, it is. We've had a lot of cold calls from potential new investors and broking houses in particular, trying to understand what's going on thematically.
Yeah.
And I think everybody in our sector would regard ourselves as all being chronically undervalued.
Yeah.
So it's been, I guess, a pretty tough 2 years for most of the companies.
Yeah.
Raising capital has been very difficult in the environments. To have the positive uptick in the last 3 weeks or so has been great for companies. And so hopefully we can all it's sustained and we can capitalize on the enthusiasm.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time coming, that's for sure. So on the note of funding, you recently have raised money through Pioneer Resources. Was it about $3 million?
That's right.
Yep. So what is that funding going to be used for?
Look, we'll spread that across our projects. So we'll keep undergoing the feasibility work down at Springdale. Some of it will go into the Collie micronising plant that's in construction at the moment. And as your audience would be aware, we're doing a feasibility study on an expandable graphite project in Germany with some wonderful partners.
Yeah.
And so some of that money will be allocated to that project as well.
Okay. And then so you've received quite a lot of support from both the Western Australia government and the federal government. So I understand that is it about $10 million that you can still draw down?
That's right. Yeah. 17.2 have been contracted.
Yeah.
And we've got 10.5 thereabouts still to be drawn down.
Yeah. Okay. And so what do you need to hit now to continue to be able to draw down on that facility?
So just keep on doing our development work. So 4.5 of that 10.2 relates to construction in Collie.
Yeah.
We've just announced this morning, as a matter of fact, another couple of milestones. So we've reached agreement to acquire the land in the light industrial area, which is just adjacent to where our existing R&D facility is.
Yeah.
And we've also submitted our development approval to the Shire of Collie.
Yeah.
So that starts the clock on a 90-day or so approval window. And we'll come out of that with essentially a detailed approved design. And that really then means we can start turning dirt on site and get our builder to start putting the shed together and order the equipment.
Fantastic. It's great progress. When we talk about governments, at the moment, we're seeing a lot of support for critical minerals, but is there potentially a risk that there's going to be too much reliance on government support to get some of these projects online?
I don't think so. There are some really unique characteristics about some critical minerals and graphite in particular that make it very difficult to secure funding. In particular, sort of the qualification process in graphite is a real challenge. The amount of material that you need to obtain from your mine site and then process it and produce a concentrate that then can be value added and tested. There's different qualification periods for different types of products.
Yeah.
And if you're going down the anode pathway, that is a really lengthy, extensive period, a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
And so, but capital markets aren't really that fond of funding that sort of level of mine investment because they just don't see the success of the immediate returns that it gives. It's a long gestation period to see the benefit of that work. So governments have, I think, a really important role to play in certain aspects of your development program. As for the longevity, look, any agreement that governments do in respect of funding a mine or a plant are going to be subject to your normal banking terms and conditions, properly documented. So once you get to that point, I think you're in a very robust position.
And then so in terms of the US government, I understand that you've recently put together a proposal for about $7.5 million. Would you mind, I know it's probably quite sensitive, but would you mind kind of talking through that, where that's at the moment?
We applied under the Defence Industrial Consortium for a grant, probably September of last year. We put that grant in.
Yeah.
We got a notification in May of what they called positive feedback for award basket consideration. So it was a $7.5 million grant to be used to help progress Springdale, and also help to help to continue our downstream processing studies. And it's all under the guise of the supply chain resilience between North America and Australia. And so at the moment, that's still in the bowels of the Department of Defence going through their assessment process. We're not privy to how they're doing that. And so hopefully one day you pop up and wake up and you get some positive feedback in your inbox. But so we'll just keep on following that as aggressively as we can.
And so at the moment with the US government shut down, is that going to delay any of this sort of the time frame for getting notified for anything like that?
I can't imagine it's helpful.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Some of the conversations I've had, people do think that the anti-dumping and countervailing duties that I think is due out on the 4th of December, that potentially might be delayed now.
Well, we knew there was quite a significant delegation that was coming to this conference from the US, and none of them could travel in the end. So,
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so I mean that's indicative of what's going on in the shutdown and so forth.
Hopefully by the time we put this out, it's back open for business. Yeah. And so we saw recently China has now implemented export controls on essentially the entire graphite supply chain. What impact do you think that's going to have now on graphite prices?
Well, it's having a really big impact domestically here in Australia. So what we're doing with the micronising plant with Collie is we're getting specifications out to customers, and they're telling us that they're waiting for 6 to 12 months to get material from China at the moment. And so they're dying for an alternative supply source for their product. We heard an anecdote the other day of someone that material went from China to the US and then got flown to Australia for a user or manufacturer on the East Coast.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so that the whole dynamic I think works really favourably for us and what we're trying to do down in Collie, and same dynamics up in Germany as well.
And then so you did a presentation a few days ago and you just highlighted some of the issues that we're seeing in Africa with protests, government overhauls. Would you mind just explaining then why Australia is such a good jurisdiction?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you've seen in the last 2 years in quite a considerable amount of non-China supply of graphite comes from Mozambique, Madagascar, Tanzania, and future supplies also forecast to come from those regions. And you've seen a civil unrest, sadly, that saw Balama shut down for a period of time, probably 6 months. You've seen a coup in Madagascar this week.
Yeah.
The last fortnight or so. And Tanzanian government just issued default notices to 95 companies back in March, April, May, with respect to the level of activity that were on those particular licenses. So these are things you just don't have to worry about waking up to find in Australia. We know what our regulatory regime is around mining licenses and exploration permits and when things are due and what you need to do and what your commitments are. And so you're just not going to have those surprises. And obviously from a geopolitical and a stability perspective, we don't worry too much about civil unrest or military coups. So from that perspective, if you're a graphite consumer in Europe or North America, you've just got to be diversifying your supply sources. And so from an Australian perspective, it opens up an enormous amount of opportunity. Our job is to find a way to deliver products to them.
And then so moving to Germany, you're currently doing a site assessment and better field for expandable graphite. Why expandable graphite and why Germany?
Well, because of what we were doing in Collie, we've built up quite and the DNA of the company. So our founders are all in the metallurgical process development space. And so they actually have tiptoed out of the graphite concentrate business over the last 10 years into the downstream business and have worked with a catalogue of just industry experts. And they really liked our approach to developing into the graphite market, which has been to, you've got your Springdale deposit and you sort of the anode future, the big growth story. But to break into the market, to develop these smaller scale production facilities, import concentrates, process them, value add, sell them to customers, develop your customer base, develop your expertise. And they liked that approach. And they came to us about this time last year, actually, and we explored for 6 months an idea of building a plant in Europe that would be dedicated to the European graphite industry. And we thought the expandable business had capacity, and was looking for an alternative supply source. So Arctic Graphite is our joint venture partner, and sitting behind that is the L&S Group, who were previous owners of the Scarlin graphite mine. So they know the European graphite market as well as anybody. Within Arctic, there's some of the most experienced graphite processing people.
Yeah.
Both operationally.
Met some of them here, right?
Yeah, you have. And in particular, processing not just the concentrates into the industrial markets, but also the anode market as well. So, everyone in the industry knows who those people are.
Yeah.
So we're pretty proud that they selected us in terms of wanting to partner. I mean, of course, being a listed company, they get a bit of leverage into the listed company benefits of developing a successful business. So that's been a great partnership for us so far, and we're working really well together. And you won't find, I don't think, a collection of people that have owned and operated graphite mines and financed graphite mines.
Yeah.
You could literally count them on one or two hands outside of China. And so we're very proud of that. And we hope to execute well.
Sounding promising, but let's maybe change a bit of tune. What are the toughest challenges that you've faced over the last few years?
The challenge is really understanding the market and conveying the market and the opportunity in the market to investors.
Yeah.
So that would be one. In terms of the way you go about developing your asset, there's no doubt that the qualification process is the most challenging around the product suite that you're trying to produce, because like I said before, it takes time. Capital markets don't like the time that it takes to do that. You've got to find patient funding sources, and that's not easy, which is why governments play such an important role in our particular business. So I think grappling with that, the graphite market, how you get into the graphite market and your process for developing your validation and specifications is probably the biggest hurdle that most would face, I guess.
Yeah, okay. And so there's a lot of focus on the downstream within International Graphite, but would you mind just providing an update what's happening at Springdale? Yeah,
we're preparing our next round of on-site activities. The farmers at the moment just finishing off harvest over the next 8 weeks. So we'll stay out of their hair during that period, and then we'll go back down and do a bit more drilling. We'll do some hydrological work down at Springdale to continue the permitting process. So there's not a lot of work we need to do on site. We just need to get probably another 3 or 4 months of geological data and metallurgical data together, and then let the engineers and designers go about finishing off the feasibility study for it. So there'll be a bit of activity towards the end of this year, early next, and then back to the number crunchers, if you like, and the plant designers to do their thing.
And then so hopefully we're sitting down again this time next year. What can we expect to see between now and then?
By this time next year, I would like to think that the Collie plant construction's it's just about complete. I mean, we've got a real pipeline to commissioning. We would like to think that we've committed ourselves to the construction of the expandable plant in Germany and have the Springdale feasibility completed. So they're the 3 big ticket items on our agenda this year, always subject to a little bit of funding here and there. Yeah.
Hopefully, as we've seen this week, the market is hopefully starting to change a bit.
Yeah, well, look, I think we've done a great job in managing our capital structure over the last 3.5 years since we've been listed. We've had one capital raise in that period of time. So we've taken a company with 160 million shares in issue at IPO to 196 today. So we're pretty tight. Under that sort of capital structure, in 12 months' time, we'll have 2 potential plants in production in 2027 if we get our funding mix right for those particular plants. I think there's a lot of leverage to shareholders to enjoy the successes of a good execution plan in the next 12 months.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's sounding like an exciting time. So, thanks for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to do this in person. And
fantastic, Harry.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, you too, mate. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into this episode of Graphite Hub's interview series. We'll see you next time.